Unearthed from the sands of time lay hidden treasures preserved for eternity. Time capsules coveting secrets about an ancient custom. From the sacred rituals to the preservation practice that continues to mystify modern science. Journey through the heart of history and discover ancient Egypt's quest for the eternal hereafter. For thousands of millennia, the ancient Egyptians prepared for death because they enjoyed life. Dying was not the end, but merely a gateway to the next world and life beyond. Mummification, the sacred process of preserving the dead, became the Egyptians' essential method for achieving immortality. The origin of the mummy has roots in Egyptian mythology. According to legend, Osiris, the god of the dead, was reborn after death and became the symbol of resurrection. At night, Osiris would join forces with the sun, traversing through the dangers of the underworld to rise again in the morning. Like Osiris, the ancient Egyptians believed they too needed to overcome the same dangers to ensure immortality by protecting their Ka, or soul. If the body wasn't preserved bearing the likeness of the deceased, its soul might be lost or destroyed, and the person couldn't be resurrected into the next world. In its early beginnings, the dead were wrapped in goat skin and buried in shallow desert graves. The natural effects of the Saharan air and sand against the skin acted as natural drying agents. Hold for plain. Over time, the Egyptians gradually perfected an artificial method to preserve the body. If done correctly, the Egyptians believed a corpse could survive for eternity. As a result, mummification quickly became a skilled profession and cottage industry in ancient Egypt. The great Egyptian pharaohs were typically mummified. The king's nobility and officials also often received the same treatment, and occasionally common people. Evidence of this Egyptian custom can be found in the writings of the ancient Greek historians.
There are a set of men in Egypt who practice the art of embalming and make it their proper business. These priests alone prepare it for burial with their own hands and place it in the tomb, as if it were something more sacred than the body of a man. Herodotus.
The embalmers were members of a special priesthood, possessing a detailed knowledge of human anatomy and the proper rituals and prayers to be performed at various stages. While mummification remains shrouded in mystery, Egyptologists have unearthed secrets about this ancient practice. The most elaborate mummification process lasted roughly 70 days. The first ritual was to cleanse the deceased using water from the Nile, which was considered sacred. The next step was to remove most of the soft organs, which would otherwise decay and cause the body to decompose. The most challenging part of the process was removing the brain. One theory proposes that the embalmers made an incision in a nostril and inserted an iron hook to pull out the brain bit by bit. Another method might have been to insert a hook up the nose and swish it around until the brain liquefied and drained out. In either case, the skull was then rinsed with drugs to kill any bacteria and brain tissue residue. The next phase of the mummification process was quite involved. The embalmers made an incision in the abdomen using a flint knife. Then they carefully removed the organs from the chest and abdomen, such as the lungs, liver, stomach, and intestines. Unlike the brain, which was discarded, the embalmers would then wash and dry out these organs, which would be wrapped and placed in jars to be buried alongside the body.
The men called embalmers, however, are considered worthy of every honor. When they have gathered to treat the body after it has been split open, one of them thrusts his hand through the corpse into the trunk and extracts everything, and another one cleanses each of the viscera, washing them in palm wine and spices. Diodorus Siculus.
One organ not discarded or removed from the body was the heart. Ancient Egyptians believed the heart, not the brain, was the source of a person's mind and conscience. The heart was needed to determine the deceased's virtue and worthiness in the afterlife. In Egyptian myth, Anubis, the god of embalming, stands before a set of scales with the feather of truth on one side and the deceased's heart on the other. The feather was a symbol of truth and justice. If the heart weighs as light as a feather, the dead will journey to the hereafter. If the heart is heavier, a monster would consume the heart, and the deceased's soul would be lost forever. After carefully handling the precious organs, the dehydration process began. The embalmers removed all moisture from the body by covering it with natron, a naturally occurring salt with drying properties. Packets of natron were also stuffed inside the body to further aid dehydration. After the prescribed amount of time, the natron was removed and the body was washed again. This elaborate process produced a dried-out but identifiable human form. Any sunken areas were filled with various materials. False eyes were also added. After the dehydration came the involved process of bandaging the corpse in linen strips, which was an art itself. Each mummy required lots of linen, approximately 150 yards, the length of 1.5 football fields. Warm resin was applied to the bandages at several stages to further maintain dehydration and strengthen the skin. Along with the physical mummification process came the spiritual rituals. The embalming priests softly chanted incantations during the wrapping to ensure the safe journey of the dead to the other side. Special prayers and words were often written on the linen strips. Amulets were also embedded within the wrappings to protect the dead in the afterlife. In the last stage, the priests placed a shroud resembling the deceased over the corpse and then secured the entire body with linen strips. After the mummification, the body was returned to the family for a funeral and burial. At the burial ceremonies, priests performed various spiritual rituals. The most significant portion of the ceremony was known as the opening of the mouth. A priest used a special instrument to touch various parts of the mummy to open the senses enjoyed in life and now required in the afterlife. The ancient Egyptians believed the instrument allowed the deceased to see, speak, breathe, and eat for eternity. After the funeral, the mummy was ready for burial. In the case of a pharaoh, the deceased was typically placed in a stone sarcophagus and then interred in a massive tomb. The preparation and building of a burial chamber came long before one's death. The construction often required thousands of laborers and craftsmen to create a monument worthy of a king. A burial tomb was then supplied with all the mortal comforts and necessities that would also be needed in the afterlife. They often included furniture, cookware, food, games, and even underwear. In front of the sarcophagus, tiny statues were placed to represent the deceased family, friends, or devoted followers. The statues would allow the mummy to move between the land of the living and the dead. Once the entrance was sealed, no living person was allowed into the burial chamber unless risking the threat of the mummy's curse. Traditionally, the Old Kingdom pharaohs were buried in conspicuous pyramids, making them easy prey for grave robbers. As a result, the Egyptians eventually constructed their burial tombs deep underground, but it still didn't deter thieves. While over 20 pharaohs' tombs have been discovered hidden in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, only one of them had all its treasures intact. In 1922, archaeologists discovered the untouched tomb of King Tutankhamun, better known as King Tut. His well-preserved mummified body was embellished with over 140 pieces of jewelry, amulets, and other items embedded between the layers of bandages. They included golden rings, lapis lazuli bracelets, vibrant beaded collars, and sacred charms. Along with King Tut's mummy, the tomb was richly appointed with 5,000 gifts and personal possessions to assist the departed pharaoh in the next world. The discovery provided extraordinary insight into the burial customs of an ancient civilization. For roughly 2,000 years, tens of millions of people and animals were mummified in ancient Egypt. The practice ended mainly due to the spread of Christianity between the 4th and 7th centuries ACE. While only a fraction of the mummies have been discovered, they provide a fascinating tapestry of a bygone era. These precious artifacts remain a testament to human ingenuity and sophistication, bridging the gap between the past and present. As the search for mummies continues, each discovery offers fresh clues about a civilization's deep reverence for the afterlife. Every mummy tells a story of life beyond death and the hope for eternity.